All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our career fair preparation workshop. This is going to be for the virtual and the in-person fair on helping you ace the event. My name is Tina Anino. I'm the Associate Director for the College of Arts and Sciences team.
And hi, everybody. My name is Dustin Miller, and I'm an Associate Director on the C's team here at Career Services.
All right, so a little bit of things that we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about how the virtual and in-person fairs are different. We're going to talk about what you can do now to prepare. We're going to talk about some best practices and some tips for doing your employer search. Dustin's also going to talk about some day of tricks and tips on how to maximize your experience. And then we're going to end with questions if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask. So we have a few upcoming fairs, as you can see. So the Career Link is going to be the one on Friday. Then we're going to have a virtual engineering fair, followed by the on-campus fair. We're going to have the virtual all industries fair, similar to Career Link, and the biosciences fair. On our website, we're going to have a few other fairs that we are affiliated with. So make sure that you check that on our website. But here are our steps to Handshake and how to go to the events and how to register for the events. Not all the registration has opened yet, but I would definitely say a lot of them have. With the virtual fairs, registration does open up once the employers have opened up their one-on-one sessions. So you can, when you register, you can see you can register for a specific one-on-one engagement with employers. And then when it comes to like career fairs, I would definitely say the traditional fair, it's in person, you get to ask a lot of questions. It kind of gives that face-to-face contact to where attire would matter a little bit more. We did let employers know that what students are in between classes, so it's not a business professional attire. So it would be like business casual. Some suggestions that I think would be great would be like maybe a polo or a button-up shirt, maybe some slacks. Jeans is also very acceptable. So that would be like a lot of the difference. Also for a virtual fair, you get like personalized time, which is different than an in-person fair. I don't know if how many people have gone to an in-person fair, but it's a lot of different people. So you do get that one-on-one time, but at least with the career fairs, you kind of get that more personalized one-on-one. Only you two are in a room, and then employers can also do group sessions where it'll be a group of you having that conversation. How to navigate Handshake with the in-person fair. All the employers are actually already made available, so you can plan on who you would like to speak to, which representatives will be there, so you could do your LinkedIn searches and things like that. And this is just like a screenshot of how to see which employers will be there and how to filter through, the different opportunities that they have open, whether they're full-time job opportunities, whether it's internship opportunities. And you're also able to see, do they accept OPT or CPT? And then you're able to see the different majors also that they're looking for students in. When it comes to the virtual career fair, like I said earlier, the registration is not open yet. Trying to give employers time to set up their schedules and different things like that. But I think it was still an important thing to include so you can see how that registration looks and how to register. Next, this is a great link that I have on here. And in this link, you can see how to best prepare for a virtual fair, how to get most of the virtual fair. It's a blog that Handshake actually has offered as a resource. So I think it's something great to take a look at, and it can assist you with that. Because as you can imagine, the virtual fair It's a little bit more technical, and you sign up for your slots, so it's more of a schedule than just being able to kind of roam the room like in an in-person fair and go to each booth, that it's not necessarily scheduled. This is just other different blogs that Handshake has available on, how to better prepare, how to get the most out of doing the virtual fairs. And I think this is really great. It even talks about attire, which is something I've been getting a lot in a lot of my student appointments. So I think that it's a great tool that you can look at how to best present yourself virtually. So I touched upon this a little bit, but so the perks of a virtual fair. I know a lot of times students are like, what's the perks of a in-person versus a virtual? I would definitely say there is a little bit of overlap with the employers, but definitely there's a lot more and a lot more variety in the virtual fairs, just because there's not a capacity. So for the in-person fair, we can only have 80 people, of course, as far as space, but the virtual fair, it's unlimited. It also helps with employers that they don't have to pay. So a lot of times there's different employers that are doing the virtual fair. I would say the most important one, and students that have been to fairs before, there's no lines. And I think that that's great. Some of the different employers could really have really long lines to get your one-on-one time. Um, there's it's later on, so you have time to prepare and research. And then you have, like I was saying, the one-on-ones that are 10 minutes. And I just think it's a great way to kind of have that individualized time. And it's 10 minutes, which could be a little bit hard at an in-person career fair, just based off of time. So they may do like a lot more conversations, but I think it's super cool that you get 10 minutes of where you can, pick their brain, ask those questions, and then get those contacts. Like I said, again, there's also opportunities for group sessions. That is when employers can do Q&A. There's not capacity of how many people come in the group sessions. It's 30 minutes. Usually there is questions and answers at the end, so you can still get that information. And it's just it's a great time for the employers to share information on whether there's an opening or a little bit more of the company, if they're running some type of program. I think it's a great way for that. And then you also don't have to worry about where you're going to keep your stuff as you're walking around. As you know, you sign on the computer, and then, it's also in the convenience of wherever you are. So that's also great for those that may live off of campus. So the virtual fair is also a great alternative too. So a few things of what to do in advance. Okay, so you definitely want to check when the registration opens and mark your calendar, right? So registration has been open for the past couple weeks. And the date is September 8th, next Friday from 10 to 3. Then you want to go on Handshake and do a little bit of handshake search. So updating your profile. I know a lot of students, welcome back. So you may not have updated Handshake for what you've done this summer. So that'll be a great opportunity for you to do that. It's also a great opportunity to make your profile visible to employers. If you don't have a Handshake, it's a great opportunity to create one. I mean, not Handshake, and also LinkedIn as well. So I definitely think that this is a great opportunity for you to do that now. Next thing would be to update your resume. We have great different tools for your resume. We have a resume checklist that you can review. We have different templates you can utilize. We have also services with meeting with our PCAs or our advisors to get your resume reviewed and critiqued. And then we also have a portal that's on our website that you can actually upload your resume, and you can get feedback within 7 business days. And then for those that are more focused or more geared towards the virtual fair, this is a great time for you to figure out a quiet space, professional space with strong internet. So whether that is, reserving a room in the library, or, giving your roommates a heads up, finding a place if you're not sure where you're going to go. This gives you time to do that so that while you're in those one-on-ones in the virtual fair or in the group sessions in the virtual fair, you can be present, camera on, looking professional, and have like a very quiet professional space. For those that are coming in person, and honestly, for those that are still virtual, it gives you time to try to figure out what you're going to wear. We do have partnership with the wardrobe for those that need some assistance with professional attire. That information is on our website. And if someone does have information or someone does need further information, I'm happy at the end of the presentation to provide my email to show how to do that. But on our website, you can see how to make an appointment and how to get those clothes. I would definitely say that it's best to do that now, just in case they are booked, or to give ample enough time to have an appointment with the wardrobe. But they do assist with professional attire, so just know that that is a resource and an option that is free for Penn students. And then it also gives opportunity to review and research a list of like registered employers. From a list that I show in the previous slides of how to look at all the employers that are going to be there, it gives you time to gather information on whether that is the LinkedIn for the representatives, or whether that is, just company information, giving you time to ask questions that are tailored to the company and prepare. All of this gives you time to, do your research and put your best foot forward. This is like a screenshot of the one-on-ones and what that looks like. Remember I said that they were 10-minute meetings. So this is like one of the companies, is what you would see. You could see when they open up their one-on-ones. And then you can actually make one-on-one appointments with different people depending on your interest of who's gonna be a representative of the company. So as you can see on here, we have one with the director of applied machine learning, and then there's one with the a machine learning engineer, if that was something more that you wanted to speak to. And then after the fair, something that I think is a great thing to remember and a great best practice is to message to give them a thank you. For the in-person fair, you are once you get their business card or their contact information, I think that's also something great. It's great to have these people in your network for when you're applying to internships in their company or full-time employment in their company. I think that this is a great way to keep the conversation going, and gain just a few more professionals in your network. So for the virtual, this is a screenshot of that, of how to see how to send a message. It will pop up on Handshake, but just definitely a friendly reminder, just don't forget, specifically with in person, because you talk to a lot of people as well. So it's also great to like keep like a padfolio or something in that nature to start collecting different business cards. So researching employers and what this looks like. This is something that's very important. It really shows that you are prepared. It shows that you took the time to care to pull up some information, see what the company culture is like, see what type of positions are available, see if this is an interesting industry that you may be interested in. I think this is like kind of like your time to shine. I think that it will be a great way that would research and just preparing in general would make you what they call like an ideal candidate or ideal applicant. And I think that that would be a great way to kind of set yourself apart as well. And then also looking at different things that they may have done, right? So taking a look at their social media, seeing if they launched any type of campaign, seeing if they, did a donation, something of that nature, just kind of going the extra mile to do that research. I think that could really set you apart when they're speaking to hundreds of people during that day. And then different tools for research. As I said before, Handshake is a great one. Going on the organization's website to see what that looks like. LinkedIn, Vault Guides, what Dustin will be talking about later on. on, going to the library, Glassdoor. Those are all great tools to kind of do your research. And I would say, talking to people is also a great one. Let's say you know someone that did an internship last year. That would be a great person to talk to, asking, those questions of the company culture and how was your experience, and different questions like that would be helpful. And then employer pages on Handshake, you are able to kind of follow them and see, as they're uploading different jobs and things like that, to kind of be in the know and be updated with the different employer pages on Handshake. So just know that that is also an option for you. On there, a lot of times they'll put different information on there, whether that is about their the company description or something of that nature. It's worthwhile to kind of get a look of what they're having on Handshake. You can also check their LinkedIn as well. On here, like I was saying, on the company page, you can see different people talking about the interview process, what it was like. I think that this is a great insight to see what that looks like. How many rounds of interviews were there? What kind of questions did they ask? And that can help you prepare as well. Like I said earlier about using your peers also as a way to do research. You can see who has worked there on Handshake, which is why it's really important, as I said earlier in the presentation, to update your Handshake, because you just give other people an opportunity to find you and be able to ask you questions. Once you become upperclassmen or once you're finished with the internship, it helps keep up to date information of what you did that summer, and it will give some students direction on how to contact you and message you and different things like that. So I think this is also a great tool. Like I said, when you look at the companies on Handshake, you can also see which ones of your peers work there. And then just making sure that your filters are on correctly. So you can see people, as you know, many schools use Handshake. So it's great to just see just UPenn students. And then now I'm going to pass it over to Dustin.
Thank you, Tina, so much for all the information so far. This has been awesome. Um, Hello again, everybody. As Tina mentioned, one of those other tools that we can utilize are the Vault guides on the Career Services website. So you actually have access to these guides via our website. When you log in, you can look up additional company research and information. As you can see here, there's company guides, industry guides, job guides, interviewing guides. Some of those will actually even include some common first round questions that could be asked. So this is just an additional way that you can prepare or maybe even learn about a new industry that you're interested in or want to make sure that you're up to date on some information or even industry terminology and language. All of these things can go into identifying employers that we're thinking about talking about when we're going to the fairs, or if we're going to be meeting somebody, virtually, to be our best selves and to be prepared. So definitely take a look. You can even hear about the day in the life potentially about working at a certain company. So Vault guides are definitely a resource that I find in myself in appointments, steering students towards if they kind of have some overarching questions and just want to learn more. So we definitely wanted to make sure that we pointed Vault guides out today. Additionally, Tina mentioned the Lippincott Library as a resource. So if you really want to impress somebody and kind of go the extra mile, what you can do is do some of this research ahead of time, right? So there's some high-level reports, information on employers through the library. When you visit the page, as you can see here, where it says the business research guides, that's where you would want to get started. And then you'll see on the next slide, from there, you will actually then be able to go on the next slide, it says career information. Tina, if we could see the next one with, so after you're able to click over to there, you go to career information, and then after that, you're going to then be able to access a multitude of resources on everything from LinkedIn Learning courses to the company and industry specific information. And there's an example on the next slide here that I'll be able to show you a little bit of what that looks like there. So again, you see there we have companies and industries along the top, as well as potentially about different workshops or your questions that you might have. But definitely recommend using this as a resource to be able to learn even more about an employer, a specific role, an industry, even a company. Doing all these things is just going to make, like Tina said, you a more competitive applicant and candidate. Because remember, we're trying to make first impressions too. So these are all things you can do in advance to give yourself the best experience. So we wanted to point out all of these tools, and now we're going to get into some day of tips and tricks, to maximize your experience. So you'll see that there's, with both types of fairs, there are three things employers are going to want to know, and we're going to, touch on these a little bit. So these are questions you want to ask yourself as you're preparing for the fair, right? So how can you contribute to the organization, right? So maybe this means what in your experience is relevant to this specific role or job or company overall? What in your education is relevant? Are there specific courses that you want to remind yourself of? I often found myself when I was preparing for career fairs going back and thinking about some courses that I had taken, conversations or maybe projects that I had had. All of these things are good answers to start the conversation as far as what we bring to the table to an organization, and being able to articulate that in a way that makes sense, but is also concise because we know that time is a little bit limited. So the next question that you're going to want to ask yourself is, why do you want to work for them? Right? Like, so specifically, why maybe this industry, why this organization, and then what are your goals? So why this industry? That could relate to your educational background. It could relate to a previous internship that you might have had. Perhaps you read information on one of the Vault guides, right? And then read up on the organization and you believe in their values or their mission statement. Or perhaps you respect that they're always ahead of, the cutting edge technology or something like that. I always say the more specific, the better, because again, it shows you took that extra step to learn more about them, have some new information, and bring that to the table. It'll really impress them if you're able to talk about their organization to the very people who currently work for them. So I definitely suggest this. And then additionally, how can they help you? I think a lot of times we often forget that it's a two-way street. The company should be a good fit for you as well. Are they going to help you to fit your goals and to achieve them? And do those align with what you can get out of, an employer specifically? And then what are you going to be like as a coworker? So you're going to be asked like, hey, Tina, like, so nice to meet you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, right? Like, so how would you describe yourself? You might have been asked in an interview before or an elevator pitch conversation, how would your friends describe you? Or how would coworkers describe you? These are all questions we want to think about and start to formulate some answers in our head so that we're not completely caught off guard. I'm not suggesting that you need to sit up there and, type out a script or anything like that. Because we want to make sure that it's authentic and an organic part of the conversation. We don't want to sound overly rehearsed. Allow yourself to be human, allow yourself to be you, and let that personality shine through, because those are also things that, employers are going to be sought after. So just think about these three questions and start to maybe jot some things down in your head or even on paper if that works better for you. Is something you want to think about ahead of time. So now we're going to cover each of these things as we proceed here for best practices for in-person. And some of these things can still apply to the virtual, but specifically, obviously, attire is going to look a little bit different, what to bring, your arrival and greeting, and then you want to know how to follow up too. So all of these pieces I'm going to touch on. So we'll start with the attire first. So the attire, you're going to see, you want to see here on the next slide, there's a couple of pictures that are going to show some examples of what you could be wearing. So Tina, if we could see the next slide with some of those examples. So you do have a lot of different options, right? I don't know necessarily that anybody would have to come, in a full suit or a full pantsuit. If you would like to wear something like you see displayed on the screen, that would certainly be appropriate for in person. There's lots of different options, and then you want to be just conscious of the weather. Now it's September, and it's pretty warm out, so I don't know necessarily that you're going to have to be bringing jackets and things of that nature. But if you typically run cold or you don't want to be, cold and be prepared, it could be, maybe better than not to bring a jacket. So a lot of different options, but just think about how you would want to present yourself, because again, this is an impression that you're trying to give. So just think about something that you can feel confident in, right? And present your best self. So what are we going to be bringing? You definitely going to want to remember that pen card for check-in, hard copies of your resumes too. All right. So when you're having a great conversation with an employer and it's about to wrap up, this is actually the first step in what I'm going to talk about a little bit later, as far as the thank you or a follow-up. You want to have that resume to be able to hand them, right? That's very impressive. If you're able to showcase your whole conversation, and then, by the way, here's my resume. I look forward to being in contact with you. You want to have some sort of writing utensil. And this can be, a pen or a pencil. Tina mentioned about bringing a notepad or a padfolio. You don't want to have a ton of stuff to carry, but you do want to be prepared with some of these things so that you can jot down emails or contact information. I highly suggest that if you're having these conversations with folks and you'd like to continue the conversation, make sure you get a business card or a handout with their email address, or at least find their names so that you might be able to track them down on LinkedIn if you want to follow up, anything like that. But we don't want to have our hands overly full and juggling a million different things as we're trying to focus on our conversation as well. And then you just want to avoid bringing, things like, beverages or food. Bottled water is okay, of course. You're doing a lot of talking, so you want to make sure that you're not parched, and don't have dry words. You don't want to really be bringing large backpacks or shoulder bags. We have a phone not silenced, and then also, this is something that is easy to maybe not forget, but you might not want to be wearing another organization's logo if you're going to talk to different employers. Of course, just again, I would try to stay as neutral, as possible with some of that attire. But this is kind of a good list. I'll give everyone here a second just to take another look of things that you want to bring, and then maybe some things to avoid bringing. Especially in person, it does get a bit crowded. That's why we kind of advise against having the large bags or shoulder bags. And then make sure your phone's silenced, right? So if you're in conversation with folks, we don't want to, come off unprofessional and have our phone ringing and dinging as we're having a conversation with them. And so for the arrival and greeting, right? So you approach the table. So how does this conversation go? For some of you, this could be your very first career fair that you plan on attending this fall. And for others, it's always good to have a, refresher anyway. So just having a smile, right? Like being friendly. I know we might have like some nerves or a little bit anxious about the conversation, but be happy. They're there to talk to students, right? They're there to have conversations and to share about their company, about their role, and to answer your questions. So take a big deep breath before you get up there, smile. And then as far as shaking hands goes, kind of just read the room. Some people are still going to be, comfortable. Others, might not. So just kind of, like I said, read the room a little bit with that. And then these are some of those questions that I mentioned earlier, that your 30-second spot, right? Things that you're going to want to think about ahead of time so that when you're in the moment, you're ready to go. And certainly by the time you get to several employers down the line, you will have rehearsed this and kind of gone through this a couple of different times. So who are you, right? And this can look like things, like your name, what you're studying, maybe where you're from, other just kind of small factoids, so that you can get into more of your related experience, the positions, the company itself that you might be, why you're interested in them, right? And then just, again, conveying that interest and enthusiasm. And once you wrap that piece up, it's going to be reflected back to you. Like they're going to say, oh, like, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Like, so nice to meet you. And then you want to just follow up with a question, right? To engage them in a little bit more conversation. And then another personal piece of advice, don't go to your favorite employer first, right? So if you're a little bit nervous and you want to try to like get into the groove and get into the zone a little bit, maybe go to a little bit lower stakes employer that you might not necessarily have like as much of a desire to maybe, be with. It doesn't mean we don't put our best foot forward, but if we want to try to, avoid being overly anxious and amped up to go to our favorite employer that we definitely want to talk to, sometimes getting some practice runs in with some other ones can be a good idea for that arrival and greeting. So the follow-up I mentioned. So this is going to be really important because I get asked all the time, well, Dustin, how do I separate myself, right? How do I make myself stand out? What is different about me in this career fair? They're talking to hundreds of people. How are they going to remember me? So, and it's really not on anybody else during the moment. It's the after the fair that allows you to follow up. So you have that great conversation in the fair, but that person has a whole line full of people at the table, right? They have to move on and be present in their next conversation. So we want to know how to follow up. So towards the end of that conversation, recap what you've learned with them, right? Reiterate that interest and intention of, taking the next step. So, Tina, thank you so much for sharing about the workplace culture of of the bakery. I really was excited to hear about the generous time off, as well as being able to celebrate each other's successes and lift each other up. That really has reiterated my interest, and I look forward to applying formally for the position once I see that it's posted. And then you want to ask about the best way to stay in contact throughout the process. So maybe that's via email. Maybe if you want to ask them, would you be comfortable if I were to, connect with you on LinkedIn to continue our conversation? They might have a different method of communication, but these are just a couple of ways you want to ask about how you can stay in touch with them. And then when possible, I know you're going to be speaking to a lot of different folks, but sending a brief thank you note is going to be a game changer. This is so much more than just saying, like, thank you for your time, right? You want to recap these similar steps in the thank you note. So in your thank you note, you include, maybe what you have learned, reiterating that interest again, and those same components can live in the thank you note. I find this to be really important because this gives you a chance to extend the conversation. Like Tina mentioned, there's only a little bit of time when you're in those conversations in person. You don't really get a ton of one-on-one time outside of the allotment. So you want to make sure that you can continue to, sell yourself a little bit as far as the role goes. So this is a good example and a good guide of how you can know how to follow up. So specific to virtual fairs now, it's a little bit different. Okay. So we want to make sure we take care of some technical considerations. So give yourself some time in advance to the fair. Don't try to log on, a minute before your session. We want to make sure you're able to test out your microphone, your camera, check your background, right? Make sure there's nothing, inappropriate or unprofessional that you wouldn't want to have. And again, Tina mentioned earlier about having like that quiet space. So if it is reminding your roommate ahead of time or just checking in with them, that would be okay, or having a room that you reserved. You want to make sure you're joining with that preferred browser. Chrome and Firefox are typically okay. I would not recommend joining through Safari. There can be some issues that students have run into. And then you'll see the next bullet that talks about having your link ready to your resume ready for those one-on-one meetings. So you don't want to be, digging through the computer when you get to the point where it's time to share your resume with somebody. So kind of have that on hand, right? Definitely make sure that your name is in the file of the resume too. Don't just have, like updated resume as the file name. You're going to want to put, like Dustin Miller resume, something like that, so that it's very specific to who you are and it doesn't get lost in the shuffle with, employers, because they're going to be getting a lot of resumes throughout the day. And then just being aware of sound settings when joining a meeting. You want to mute for those group sessions until maybe a Q&A would pop open. So kind of similar to this, right? You guys came in, you were muted for this part of the session. And then, but if we were in a one-on-one, obviously we would be having more of a back and forth conversation where you would be unmuted. So these are just a couple of technical considerations that you're going to want to think about as you go through the career fair. Now, as well, if your schedule happens to change and things happen, right, we just want to make sure that we're still practicing that professionalism when we're having those conversations. So if something comes up or you're not able to make it, sometimes you want to make sure that you're reaching out to be able to cancel. You can do it up to 10 minutes before, like you see here, but you can also join in group sessions at any time. So here's a good example here about somebody writing a cancellation message. So it's something that you just want to demonstrate, again, your best self, being prepared. And if for some reason that you can't make it, you want to give them a heads up so they're not just sitting in the room wondering, where you are. That just goes along with professional communication, time management, things of that nature. But definitely just solidifying the equipment. That's kind of like one of the bigger pieces, the equipment and your schedule, the virtual fair as opposed to the in-person fair. So those are definitely just some considerations.